This way passes through the village. It is full of monsters. Better to be careful.
Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel where I like to talk about game development. I hope you are doing well and everything is going well too. In this part, I'm gonna cover implementing click-to-move navigation system. So, let's get started if you are ready. Now, we're gonna see how to implement click-to-move feature in our game. We want the player to go whenever we click on the navigational area. And also we want to use the two different movement types such as walk and run for this. We're gonna need a script that handles mouse clicks and decide if it is walk or run type of movement. So let's start by creating a new script and naming it Player UI Controller. We are getting namespace from another script and passing it here, just to make it faster. In this script, we are gonna define a delegate. Simply, delegate is the type that represents reference to the methods. We are defining movement click delegate with raycast hit and mouse click type parameters. Currently, we do not have any mouse click type definition. So let's open the definition file and then define the new enum as mouse click type. There are two members of this enum, normal and double click. After we have defined it, let's turn back to the Player UI Control script. We are defining an event by using the delegate which we had defined above. We are going to trigger this event whenever there is a click. We continue by defining layer settings such as layer mask to represent navigational layer. Then we continue by defining some private variables to understand if the mouse clicked once or double. Let's move max time between clicks to the above of the private variables as settings. By this, we can manage it from the inspector. We're going to use this variable to decide how much time should pass between each click so we can count it as double or normal click. These private variables are going to help us in deciding which type of mouse clicks we have. Now let's start to write codes inside the update method. Firstly, we're going to get ray from the screen point according to mouse position. Please pay attention that I do not recommend using camera.main directly like this. It is better to set it to variable than to use it. Otherwise, you can have some performance issues. Then we are calculating the difference between the now and the last clicked time and assign it to the delta time variable. We continue by checking the type of the button which is clicked on the mouse. If it is the left mouse click, we are checking if it is the clicked before. If it is not, we set the clicked once variable as true and mark the time as last clicked time and set the ray as previous ray. So here, we are assigning the first click of the mouse. If it is not the first click, we are checking the difference between passed time since the first click. If it is less than max time between click, we count it as a double click. Then we call the handle movement click method by passing ray and mouse click type. Then continue by setting the last time click variable. And finally, we are setting clicked once variable as false. At the bottom of the update method, we are checking if the mouse clicked once, but the difference between clicks greater than the max time between clicks. If it is, we are again calling the handle movement click method by passing ray and mouse click type as a normal. Then set the clicked once variable to the false and set the time to the last time clicked variable. To make it simple, in here, basically we are checking if the mouse clicked double between the time period. If it is, we are calling the related method accordingly. If not, we count it as normal click and call the method according to that. Let's continue with the handle movement click. Firstly, We are raycasting by using ray from the parameter and we give 100 as a distance. And finally, we are setting the layer which we want to hit. Ray represent an origin and direction here. We took it by using mouse position in the previous method. Now we need an additional helper. This helper is gonna help us to understand if the hit point is in the navigational area or not, because our models can only walk in the navigational areas, so we need to check it before going any further. So let's create navigational helper class. This class has one method for now, which is gonna check if the given position is navigational area or not, and return true or false accordingly. There is one more thing which we're gonna do for this class. This class should be Singleton, so we can reach it anywhere easily. Singleton classes are totally different subjects, that's why I'm not gonna talk about them now. But briefly, they are static classes and can be useful if we use them wisely. Otherwise, they could be a real problem too. I'm gonna use a different approach for creating Singleton classes. To be honest, this code does not belong to me. Another developer shared it on Stack Overflow, and I get it from there. I modified it a bit and did a pretty good job till now, so I am sharing it with you. Thanks to owner of the Discord. I just wanna tell you that the concept which we're gonna use here can be a bit advanced for some users, but don't worry, it is not gonna be so complicated. The concept here is generic classes, one of the features of C#. We are defining our Singleton class according to generic class structure. Then we are defining a static instance to hold the class itself, and the log object for logging, and finally, variable to understand if the application is quitting or not. We continue by defining get for the instance. Please pay attention that this instance is not the same as we have defined above. That one was lowercase. Firstly, we are checking the application is quitting or not. If it is, we are returning null. If not, we are using the log to ensure that only one thread is accessing those resources at the same time. We continue by checking if the instance is null or not. If it is, we are finding all loaded object types which we are defined as T here. Please pay attention that the T represents generic classes here and can be any other classes that is inherited from the mono behavior. If we find more than one of these classes, we are destroying all of them except the first one. If you pay attention to the for loop, it is starting from the 1, not the 0. We are assigning the first loaded class to our instance variable and returning it. If none of the cases above is valid, we are checking if there is any other loaded class. If it is, we are assigning it to the instance variable. Finally, we are checking if we don't have any loaded class. And if our variable is null, then we are creating an empty game object and attaching to the class to it, and then marking it by using don't destroy on load. By doing this, we are simply telling the Unity to not delete the Singleton class when we load new scene. At the end, we are returning instance variable. On the awake method, we are again using don't destroy on load. Then on destroy method, which is gonna be called by the Unity when the application is quitting, we are setting the application is quitting variable as true. Briefly, we are checking if there is any Singleton classes, the targeting class type which is T here. If there is more than one, we are destroying them. If there is only one, we are returning it. If there is none at all, we are creating new and returning it. So let's turn back to navigation helper class and define it as a Singleton. We are just changing mono behavior to Singleton, and that's all. Our Singleton class is ready to use, and we can reach it from anywhere easily. Now let's turn back to the player UI controller class and complete handle movement click method. We are checking if the point is in the navigational area by calling our Singleton class. If it is in the navigational area, we are assigning the point to the clickItPoint variable, and then calling displayMovementClickEffect method with the parameters of hitPoint and effect offset, which we are gonna define as serialized variable so we can change it from the inspector if we need later on. Finally, we are triggering the onMovementClick event with the clicked position and the type of the click. We can continue with the displayMovementClickEffect method. In this method, simply we are checking the type of the click and displaying effects accordingly. We need to define effects as serialized variable. By this, we can manage them easily. By the way, there are two small mistakes that we need to fix in the Singleton class. The first one should be find object of type. And the second one, we need to add parentheses here. After fixing the mistakes, we can turn back to Unity and wait for the compiling finishes. We need to add player UI controller to the player and select movement layer mask as walkable. So our script is gonna know what is the navigational arrays. Then we assign the effect that we wanna use as mouse click effects. You can use any effects for it. Let's do some tests. Yeah, looks like we have an issue here. The issue is obviously, as you already see, effects are not disappearing. Yeah, it looks like nice, but not exactly what we were looking for. Okay, let's fix the problem. The effects are not disappearing because there is nothing to make them disappear. So we're gonna add a little script which is gonna help us to do that. Let's add a new script and call it particle helper. We are starting by defining the variable which is gonna be the wait duration before destroying the effects. Then we change the start method as iAnimator. Yep, we can do that. So we are getting time from our particle system. The effects which I am using here contain a particle system. That's why if your effects are different types, you're gonna need to have a different approach to handle this issue. Then we are checking if the time of the particle system is the same as the duration variable. We are waiting an amount of time before destroying the game object, which is the effect here. So we are turning back to the Unity and adding the script to each effect that we want to use. Now we can test it again. Yep, it is as it should be. Pretty good. So as we have finished with the effects, let's make the player move. For this one, we're gonna add some codes to the player controller. Let's open it and start coding. We're gonna need the player UI controller, so let's define a variable for it. In the start method, we're gonna check if we have player UI controller. If we have, we are assigning to the method to the event which we have defined in the player UI controller. We continue by defining the method which is gonna be called by the player UI controller when there is a click on the navigational area. This is the method that is gonna tell the model to move. If you remember, in the previous part of this series, we have defined the model controller. And in the model controller, we have some methods which are responsible to set the path for the agent. As you can see here, these are the methods that we're gonna call from the player controller. So, we're gonna need to reach model controller, that's why let's define a variable for it too. After that, we can complete the onMovementClick method. We are defining the movement type and set it to walk as default. Then we are checking the type of the click. If it is normal, we are setting it to the walk. If it is double click, we are setting it to the run. Actually, because of the default assignment of the movement type, we don't really need to check if it is normal click. But for the sake of the readability, I'm gonna leave it as it is. And finally, we are calling the setDestination method from the model controller by passing the hit point, which is the position here, and the type of the movement, which could be walk or run. As we have finished it, we are turning back to the Unity and assigning player UI controller and the model controller to the player controller. So now we can test it. Let's run the game and see the result. Yep, pretty nice. Our model is moving, but instead of walking or running, she is sliding. So we're gonna need to fix this, or maybe we can consider that she has some special magical powers. So let's check the problem. We know that the model's animation is connected to two variables, speed and move. So let's check if they work correctly. We can open the animator window from the animation menu. Looks like speed is changing, but the move variable has some issues. Let's check the code for the problem. So we are checking if the model is moving or not, and setting the animation accordingly. That seems pretty okay to me. Yep, did you see it? The problem with the movement sensitivity variable value. We are turning back to Unity and checking its value. Looks like it is pretty big value for such a control. We are making it a way smaller than this. Let's see the result. Yeah, that was the problem. Now much better. Looks like we got one more issue left. The model is not running when we double click. Let's fix it too. Let's check the code where we handle double click. Did you notice the problem? After we detect the first click, we don't return from the method. Because of that, all clicks, single or double, counted as normal. So let's add a return after the first detection. Now we can test it again. Yep, that's much better. Now the model is walking and running. Before continue, I wanna make something a bit better. If we pay attention, before the movement, there is a bit of delay. The animation starts with a delay. Let's see what we can do about it. If you remember, in the model controller, we have defined a method that assigns the value to the animator just before the real movement starts. Let's increase that value. Looks like the current one is not enough. Let's change it to the .5. Now it is much better. The food sound effects which we have added in the previous video are working pretty well too. In the next part, we're gonna continue to add new cool features to our game. Guys, as usual, I really appreciate that you have gave your time and watched this video. I hope you learned something new. If there are some suggestions to make these videos better, please share them with me in the comment section and help me to grow this channel. So don't forget to like the video and please consider subscribing. Thanks again. Take care. See you.